Hey everybody, I'm Tarl Yarber with Fixated Real Estate, and welcome once again to another episode of Analyzing Deals Like a Pro. Today, I am going to go over a property that we bought in the heat of the lockdown back in 2020, a time that I didn't want to buy anything, and some of you guys might have been thinking the same thing, but yet I was committed to buy this one, and I did, and I'm happy we did, because after purchasing it and rehabbing it and then selling it, 3 months into the project, we were able to net $51,000 profit on this thing. And I'm going to show you how we did that. So this is a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath townhome in Lacey, Washington. And there's a unique side to it. Now, many of you guys are out there trying to find deals today. So what if you found a deal that had a landlord, a struggling landlord who couldn't collect rent at that time, with a tenant who really wanted to pay rent, but couldn't afford it because they got laid off? And with eviction moratoriums out there, and also foreclosure challenges where you can't really foreclose on people, you have a landlord that's still being forced to pay the mortgage but can't collect rent, and a tenant that really wanted to, and the two of them couldn't help each other out. So what if you could come into that situation and help out both sides? I'm going to show you how we did that. Not only did we help this landlord out with the property, but we also helped the tenant out and put money in the tenant's pocket and helped them start out a new life. And I'm going to show you how we did that today on Analyzing Deals Like a Pro. So some things we're going to go over today. I'm going to show you how we sourced this deal with a wholesaler friend of ours, and how joint ventures can actually be way more profitable than just doing the deal on your own. I'm also going to show you guys how we did all the rehab, how we analyzed the deal, and how we made that net profit of $51,000 on this property. And last but not least, I'm going to show you some really awesome pro tips like I like to show you guys throughout these episodes. One key thing is I'm going to show you how to control costs and how to track your costs through what's called an accounting hard cost sheet. That's something I've been using for years. Can't wait to show you that, as well as a few more tips and tricks. So let's get into it right now. So before we get into the acquisitions and how we got with the landlord and how we worked with the tenant, as well as the entire structure of the entire property and the deal, I want to at least show you this project really quick, just so you can see how simple. This was a cosmetic townhome in Lacey, Washington. I want to just show you some basic photos of it so you get a feel. Now, we take tons of photos of these properties before we ever buy them so that we can review the properties from our desktop. So we can build our scopes of work, so we can go over our finished packets, so we can design a lot of the project without ever having to walk it. And if you've seen any of my videos in the past, you hear me talk about that all the time. That's actually why we can do these videos for you. It's because we have lots of pictures. So let's jump into this project. As you can see, this is a very simple townhome in Lacey, Washington. Not that you would know Lacey, but a simple townhome. It's got some normal issues on it. Nothing looks like a big deal on the front. But as you start getting into it, you can see some normal wear and tear on the exterior. You can see the roof line as we get a little bit closer. There's some worn shingles there, which, coming back to that later, that was an issue for us because we didn't think they were that bad, but it ended up being pretty bad later, and we did not plan to have to replace this roof, and I'll talk about that later. The backyard is just overgrown, no big deal, but you can see that the house has been sitting there for a little bit of time, and due to sun damage on the right side of the house, you can see that it's warping with some of the T111 siding. So that's something to pay attention to. Even though this is a cosmetic fix and flip, you might need to realize that sometimes your people that are buying these properties from you, especially first-time home buyers, you might not think it's that big of a deal that you have a little bit of warping on the siding, but a lot of people will, especially if you make the inside of the house look really, really nice. Then you need to take care of all the little things, because in my opinion, the little things are what detract the buyers and also can make it so your house doesn't sell as quickly or for as much. So take care of the little things in your projects, and you'll see a lot of little things on this house as we go through it that we had to take care of. We had some basic stuff in the backyard, no big deal. You can see those steps. They're a little rotted out. Not too bad, but definitely a little rotted out. You can also see some siding issues down here as well. That could definitely become an issue for a potential buyer. Even though it's small, no big deal, cosmetic fix and flip, blah, blah, blah. Take care of the little things. It's really important. We're going through the rest of the project. You can see the inside. Nothing wrong with it. Nothing really wrong with it other than it's just a little dated slightly. You can see it's a little bit of use. Like I said, this was a rental for a long time. So it's got rent grade carpet, rent grade laminate in it. You can see that the paint's a little messed up. It's got laminate tops. But at the end of the day, it's actually a pretty nice place. And this is very different than the normal projects that we buy where we have to like gut the houses and so forth. But when we're going through this, we're like, we might be able to keep a lot of this. Now, how do you know how much do you actually keep and how much do you get rid of on projects like this? Because even though like the base and trim doesn't look so bad, a little bit of drywall damage, sure, you got to paint it, cosmetic, no big deal. Even though you're going through all of that and you're going like, this really not that much really to do it. The house is nice. So we can just do a light fix up and we're good to go. But what do your comparables say for your market and what you need to do for it? In this particular market, maybe we need to gut the whole house and turn it into a brand new, modern, super quartz, tile everywhere property to get the value we're looking for. Or maybe in this market, we just have to basically touch it up, clean it up, paint it, and throw it back on the market. I can't tell you what your market's going to need without you looking at the comparables or without us looking at the comparables together. And all a comparable is a property in your neighborhood that is a like kind to the property that you have. So if it's a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, can you find another three-bedroom, 2.5 bath, similar square footage and so forth? You have the like kind properties that are like maybe shitty looking and like bad quality. And then you have the ARV, after repair value comparables, which would be if you really rehab the heck out of the property, how much can you get for that property when you go to sell it? In this particular neighborhood, we didn't need to do much. We just need to make it clean, make it nice, and put it back on the market. So we knew that before going into this house that that's what it was. Now, a few red flags came up. Going back to the photos, you'll see there's a little bit of damage going on around these HVAC vents. Are like, okay, well, that doesn't just normally happen. Maybe it's from water or something like that. A little bit splitting in the laminate here. But we also have these little bugs that we saw, and those are carpenter ants. Now they might just look like ants to you, but in reality, carpenter ants. I have bought properties in the past where we've opened up sheetrock and we've seen the entire framing on the interior, on the exterior of a wall completely in dust because of tons and tons of carpenter ants for years and years just ate out the entire exterior wall framing. So carpenter ants can actually not be a very good thing for you. So we had to pay a little bit of money to be able to get rid of the carpenter ants to ensure that they were gone because there was quite a few dead bodies everywhere. And they were definitely in the walls of the HVAC vents. Rest of the property, though, you can see normal wear and tear. Kitchen, the appliances weren't so bad. They were actually pretty new. Some of them, the sink was pretty messed up. Yeah, obviously. The bathrooms weren't too bad, but the old Formica tops, we had to look at those. And we also had some leaking toilets, no bathtubs, going into the HVAC vents as well. Just basic stuff, more carpenter ants. Nice big garage. All the mechanical system looked pretty good to us. Always take pictures of the panel, by the way, and your mechanical system. And going up the stairs, you can see the carpet's pretty old. So we're going to need to change that. That's rent grade. We don't really like that. All this wood grain might not be bad in some parts of the United States and some neighborhoods. And this one, we wanted to paint that all white. So it was a little bit newer to give it a little bit of a bump as far as more modernization. We also had some old light fixtures everywhere we wanted to replace as well. But we also knew we were going to replace all that carpet. Going through the rest of the property, the bathtub and the master. Oh, that's me. All right, here's a rarity. I'm actually taking photos of this property. So because it was a lockdown, I had to be really sure that this property was going to be good. So I definitely took photos of it. This bathtub's pretty messed up, so we need to replace that. And going through the rest of it, these appliances were pretty good, so we kept those. Hall bathroom. There's Nate, our acquisitions guy. If you guys remember during lockdown, there was a toilet paper shortage for some stupid ass reason, and we just thought that was funny. So have a good time while you're working with your team as well. All right, blah, 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 rest of the house, just cosmetic, whatever. So what do I mean by cosmetic? Now, you've heard me say cosmetic a few times, gutting the house, reframing it, whatever. You've heard me say a lot of this stuff on past videos. But for you, you need to determine what level of rehab you're comfortable with. For me, for a long time, cosmetic remodels were something that I was only comfortable with. And that's when you're just doing the stuff that you see, right, on a property. That's your paint, your carpet, your appliances, cabinets, all that great stuff, things to make it, the finishes to make it look nice. That's a cosmetic remodel. And then you can do a little bit a heavier remodel where you're doing a little bit more of alterations. You're adding bathrooms, you're ripping out the kitchen and moving it somewhere else. You're altering the floor plan. That's a heavier remodel, alterations. Then you got full gut jobs where you're bringing it down to the studs, a studs out remodel, right? And then of course you have your pop tops, which is adding second floors. You're adding additions. You're digging out basements. There's so many ways to be able to do this business, especially in fix and flip. I always advise everybody, please choose what's best for you. Just because you think it's going to be cool to be able to do a full gut job down to the studs property doesn't mean it's something that you should be doing, especially today with the way that the market is and material costs. So watch that, because you'll see your budgets go up really, really fast if it's something that you're not used to. Let's talk about how we acquired this property. Now, first, we acquired this property because we work with wholesalers. A wholesaler is somebody that ties up properties with a purchase and sales agreement direct with the seller and then assigns the contract over to investors like me. Now, I prefer not to work directly with the seller if I can avoid it. Personally, I used to do that years ago on a BiggerPockets episode 189. You could check it out. I go through that whole story of how I used to do that. But over the years, I found for me, it's better for my business and my system if I focus on the property and not so much on the acquisitions. So our acquisition strategies for many, many years has to do with working with wholesalers and real estate agents to acquire properties through them. That requires building tremendous relationships with a lot of people. So if you're only talking to one agent or one wholesaler in your market and you're not finding any deals, I can tell you that's probably why. Because one wholesaler might only find one deal every few months or every year, if at all. So you definitely need to network with as many as possible out there, especially also with real estate agents, so you can confirm numbers and they find great deals too. So work with your local agent. So this particular one, we work with a wholesaler. They were talking to the seller. The seller had a tenant issue. The tenant issue wasn't able to pay, was because they couldn't pay rent. They got laid off. A lot of people got laid off, especially blue collar workers. They couldn't afford the rent. The landlord loved the tenant. They tried to work stuff out, but at the end of the day, the landlord needed to pay their mortgage. But also, the landlord was very nervous about the market at the time and just wanted to get rid of the property and cash out. Now, there's quite a few landlords out there right now in the market today that still can't collect rents. Maybe they've been floating it for a year or longer now, and they're at a point where they can't do anything about it anymore. They can't maybe pay their own mortgage. Maybe they can't even give something called cash for keys to the tenant, which I'm going to get into. And that might be an acquisition strategy that you might want to look at for yourself if you're an agent or a wholesaler out there trying to talk directly to sellers. There's a lot of people that need help right now. Now, in this situation, working with the wholesaler, we suggested, hey, let's do a cash for keys with the tenant. So we worked out a deal with the landlord that we'll buy the property with the tenant in it. And then working with the wholesaler, we went to the tenant there and said, hey, we'll help you with your situation. If we put money in your pocket, right, in this current part, you could save the fact that you might not have to go through eviction later. You can find a new place, something that you can afford better, right, in an area you want to live in. And they wanted to move. They just couldn't afford it at that time because of all the costs. So we put almost $5,000 into the pocket of this tenant to do something called for cash for keys. So despite the eviction moratoriums out there, a tenant can willingly leave a property if they want to, right? They don't have to be evicted to leave. So we put some money in the tenant's pocket. They were able to sign an agreement to basically say they release all rights to their actual, landlordship or whatever, their tenant rights on the property. And they left the property on their own free will in a couple weeks after buying it. And in which case we were able to take possession of the property at that point. The landlord got paid. They were super stoked. The tenant was very, very happy. They had money in their pocket to be able to move somewhere else, someplace else that they could afford a little bit better. And they were extremely happy that they were able to get out of the situation they were in. They did not like doing what they were doing to the landlord at that time. So there's a lot of creative ways to structure deals on the acquisition side and not just throw up your hands and think that you just can't work with somebody that has a tenant inside a property that won't leave because of the eviction moratorium. You might have to write a check. And that's okay if the numbers work out in the deal. So let's go over the numbers on this deal. Now, after all in, when we went and purchased it, we also paid cash for keys for the deal. We ended up buying for $237,000 after closing costs and so forth. Now, we borrowed $240,000 total from a hard money lender and a private lender to combine the two a little bit. And that was at a 12% interest rate due to what was going on in the market at that time in 2020 when it was really, really hard to get rates. We also had to pay about 2.5 points actually at that time as well. After doing all of that, we paid Rehab all cash, and we estimated at that time, we thought we were going to spend about $15,000 in rehab, and we ended up spending $24,500 in actual construction. Now, why did we spend $10,000 more on this property? Now, I showed you briefly that roof, but that was a reason why we spent a little bit more, because we had to replace that entire roof because we did not inspect it pre-purchase. I'll get into that a little bit later. Now, the total time on this project, we were able to wrap up the rehab really, really fast and only spent about less than maybe about 45 days doing it all in from purchase to rehab and getting it right back on the market as quick as possible. And after closing, it was a 30-day close. We barely reached 3 months. It was about 2.5 months of whole time. And with a $2,400 a month payment and all the taxes, fees, everything we had to go into it, and selling costs, we had a 4.5% agent commission. Plus, also we had excise tax and closing costs of 2.3%. We ended up netted $51,594 net profit on this project in about 3 months. All right, now I want to go into my next pro tip, and that is on joint ventures. Now, I want you to think about this. If you can make, call it in this scenario, let's say you can make 50% of something or 100% of nothing, what would you prefer to have? Now, this particular deal was brought to us, yes, by a friend of ours, a wholesaler friend of ours, who we've worked with for years, and he wanted somebody that he knew could close the deal because despite the market conditions, but he didn't need us to do this deal. He could have made more money wholesaling it to somebody else than sending it to us because there's a few other people out there still looking to buy. But he decided to bring it to us, and he's like, hey, I need to make a certain assignment fee on it, but I also know there's risk to it because of the market. Can we work something out here, maybe possibly as a joint venture, and pay me something on the back end of the deal? Now, I was very open to this because, yes, I wanted to work with my buddy, but also I wanted the deal despite market conditions at that time. So we worked out a deal that we pay a small a wholesale fee up front of $10,000 to his team. So they got paid that. And then he'd get another 30% of the back end profit. He initially wanted to make $25,000 on this deal, which he could. You looked at my deal on this one, and we netted $51,000 at the end of the day on this project. An assignment fee like that, he could probably make 25 grand assignment fee on this deal if he would have wholesaled it to somebody else based on the cash and cash return. So we were willing to work something out with him. Plus, get this, if you're in a situation right now where you're a house flipper like I am and you're looking for deals, and there's some great wholesalers out there that want to get into flipping, but they can bring you the deal. But also, maybe if you pay them something a little bit on the back end, they'll bring you even more deals. So there's a few things you need to do on this business to make it work really, really well. You need an acquisition side. You also need the other step, which is operations, which is actually what you actually do once you buy the property. And then you need your stabilization and disposition phase. So you have your acquisitions, your operations, and then your stabilization, disposition, which is the end part. And the reason why I call it stabilization is that's either a BRRRR, like you rent it out and you put a tenant in, or a disposition, you sell it or refinance it and then to cash out and then sell it or something like that. But you can do many, many things with that. But you definitely need acquisition. Somebody needs to source the deals for you. If that's not you, you are either networking with a bunch of people out there to find deals for you, or you are partnering with people to find deals for you. I do both, right? And over the years, I used to only buy deals from people, and I would never, ever joint venture with people that was an acquisitions person. But I found that it's actually a lot more fun to start doing deals with people that I like and trust, and working with other wholesalers and giving them a back end profit is not a bad thing in this business if the numbers make sense and they bring something more to the table, and they're going to possibly bring you more deals later. So we worked out a 30% joint venture deal with the wholesaler. What does that mean? That means at the end of the project, when we netted $51,000 on this project, he got $15,000, we got $36,000. He did all the work up front to make the deal happen. We spent the 25 grand to make the rehab work and resell it, which is something that we're really, really good at to begin with. He did what he was best at. We did what we were best at. And we all made money and made the tenant and the landlord happy, and a new homeowner that got a beautiful house, plus also a property got fixed in a neighborhood. Everybody wins. So sometimes you got to set your greed aside and work out a deal that you can work at your highest and best use. And in this scenario, this was our highest and best use. I hope you guys take that, because that's a big pro tip if you really think through this. All right, so let's look at the after photos so you guys could see how big of a difference we made this property. And I can tell you right now, it's not that big of a difference because it was a cosmetic flip. So here's the house. It almost looks like the same as the first one, but it's got a slightly newer roof on it, right? Which is great. But I do want to talk about one other pro tip, which is hire a professional to take your listing photos. I can't tell you more. Probably one of my biggest pet peeves in this business when I'm looking at comps and comparables is I feel really, really bad for the homeowner that hired the real estate agent that decided to take all their photos with their shitty ass flip phone that they bought like 10 years ago. It is $100, maybe $150 to be able to pay a professional photographer to take your photos for you. And it is night and day. So please, please, please do yourself a favor and hire a professional photographer, or make sure you have an agent that actually hires a professional photographer for your listing photos. They know how to take the angles. They know how to make a house that didn't look so nice look nice, right? Yes, that is new carpet, even though from the distance it looks the same as the old one. That is the same laminate. We just found a matching version of it and patched it all up. We didn't actually end up painting any of the trim white like I thought we did, but we didn't when I was doing it before. This is how much I care about my properties. But we cleaned this up pretty well. So it looks really nice. All brand new paint throughout. We kept the Formica. This is the same appliances, but we replaced that sink because that sink was pretty messed up. And we never keep the same appliances. This is like a rarity, and we love that we were able to do that. Of course, replace the toilet. Everything else is the same in here. The carpet's all brand new paint everywhere, but we left all the trim the same. And when you also go now, look how nice these photos are. A nice professional photographer made that. We did replace this bathtub here, and we did some of the lighting and so forth as well. But made it clean, made it nice, put some money in the backyard, fixed up some stuff, made it a little bit better. At the end of the day, this was a cosmetic flip. All right, so now on to my next pro tip. I want to show you a tactic that we've used for many years. It's a skill we've used for years. It's a software we use for years. And it's just something that we do all the time for every single project. And it started back for me back in 2011 when we started really doing these. And that's an accounting hard cost sheet. Now, what is accounting hard cost sheet? Some of you guys might be using QuickBooks for your properties. Some of you guys might be tracking your expenses on Excel or whatever you guys are doing. Now, besides photos, we, for every single property, we also create a tracking sheet for expenses for every single property. Now, if you don't use QuickBooks or if you don't use some sort of other accounting software, you can use an Excel spreadsheet very simply to track all your expenses per property. Where it gets messy and where your CPAs and accountants get pissed off at you if you start doing too many properties is if you don't track any of these things and you lump all your expenses into one account or one sheet for all your properties. Please do yourself a favor and start segmenting your expenses per property. Even if you're wholesaling deals, if you could segment your expenses per assignment contract, you're going to be able to work out a lot better situations for your accountant and your CPA in the long run. So for us, we started using accounting hard cost sheets a long time ago. We made these very basic. You can use this on an Excel spreadsheet. We used to use these on Excel spreadsheets for many years. And then we upgraded to Google Sheets. And then we upgraded to a program called Smart Sheets. Now, I do not encourage you guys to go buy a Smart Sheet at all. It's expensive. It's ridiculous. We use it for a lot of other stuff, but it is something that we do enjoy. But I could promise you right now that you're going to feel it's an overpriced Excel spreadsheet because it kind of is. And unless you have other reasons to use Smart Sheet, don't use it. Just use Google Sheet or an Excel spreadsheet for what I'm about to show you. So this is and I'm going to show you here. This is our accounting hard cost sheet that we use. Now, these are all columns. You'll see that we have different columns for how we set up our accounting hard costs. You have your scope of work, who we paid the invoice to, what the invoice was for, the amount we paid, what date it was sent, the payment method, and then did we input it in QuickBooks? Because we also have a QuickBooks. Was it paid? And is the invoice in Dropbox? And does it require a reimbursement? This says reimbursement in it if you open it up. So we start at the pop, which is the owner, which is none of your business. I'm not telling you any of my LLC names. We paid $24,498 of total rehab on this project, but we budgeted $15,000. Now you guys are going to look at that and go like, wow, you guys really suck at this business. I'm going to show you why that was. This was such a quick cosmetic thing that we did not expect a few of the issues we did, which can one of the downsides of the cosmetic flips is that if you miss some big things, it can cost quite a bit more when you budget a little bit less. Now, it was a huge margin on this property, huge margin for what we were making on it. So it didn't really hurt us very much at all. But if you're buying a tight margin deal, that might have been all your profit. So you got to be really careful. We track our payouts to our GC, and this is how much we paid our general contractor on it, $11,436. But this is the real thing that we track here. This is a line item aspect of every single thing that we paid on this particular property, who we paid it through, all that great stuff. And so going through it, you can see that, okay, we paid affordable housing, affordable pest, carpet ant treatment, $585. That was an expense we didn't expect. Small G, we paid them the pre-cleaning, right? $420, we expected that we're going to do that. We expected we were doing carpet sheet and vinyl. We expected we were paying the contractor to do all the paint and all the fixes that we had. We also expected the landscaping, the window cleaning, and so forth. But we did not expect a few other things. So if you just add up the prices that we did expect, which is what we budgeted for in the beginning, that equates to $15,198, which is our budget of 15 grand. So we thought we're good to go. But we spent $6,500 on a roof that we didn't expect to replace because we really didn't look at it, and we should have. And we had some change orders that once we started getting into stuff, such as the carpenter ants and a couple of damages that they created, and a few other challenges that came up when we were fixing stuff, that on a cosmetic flip, kind of happens. So you add this stuff up here, you spend another $8,700 plus, of course, the carpenter ant. You're almost 10 grand more, which is where the almost $10,000 difference comes in on this project. Why is this important? Now, this is important because if I could show you right now on every single project, every single cost associated with the expense of this deal. Now, you might be thinking, why not use QuickBooks for everything or some other accounting software? You could totally do that if you classify the properties right. And maybe one day I'll do a much more detailed video on how we handle all the classifications in QuickBooks if you're ever interested in that, all the stuff too, a little nitty gritty. But why we use a separate spreadsheet is because it's a double entry system. If you have a team, if you have other people involved, they don't need access to all your QuickBooks. You might not want to share that with them, but you might have one particular property that you need them to have access to, and you could track it all through that one spreadsheet, and everybody can see it. They can see it in Dropbox, Google Sheets, Smart Sheet like us, and have complete access to it. You can have your bookkeeper have access to that. You can have outside resources have access to that. You can have joint venture partners have access to that. It just makes things a lot easier. But when I was newer, and back in 2014, 2015, when I started fixated real estate on my own after I left my partnership, I needed something that I can use, and I used the heck out of these accounting hard cost sheets, and my CPA loved it. He loved at the end of the year, I'd have this stack of 20 or 30 Excel spreadsheets that would be printed out with the total tally of all expenses on that property, what it sold for, all expenses there, and the net profit. And he could take that and have my taxes work well for me just on those sheets. Loved them. It was super simple. It was a very cost-effective way to do that. I can get in the weeds on that, guys, and there's so many more complicated things you can do with it, but I hope that helps a little bit. Please track your expenses. I think the number one thing that most house flippers and wholesalers don't do is track their expenses, and it's not that hard to do. Could we have rented this property out? Yeah. Could we have cash flowed it? Yes, we could have. Could we have burned it? Of course. We could have done all those things on this property. But due to fear, circumstances, whatever you want to call it, we were terrified of the world back in May, June of 2020. So we wanted to sell this thing. Now, there are many properties I bought during that time period that I'm looking back going like, oh, shit. But none of us had a crystal ball. None of us knew what the market was really going to do. Some of you guys might have been guessing. A lot of you guys thought it was going to crash, right? And now we're all geniuses because look at us owning this real estate. So once again, you have no idea what the market's going to do. Do the best for yourself in this business with the tools that you have, the knowledge that you have, the resources that you have. It's all you can do. Don't regret anything in the past. If you would have listened to me back then and you listen to me now, I would have been like, shit, don't buy anything if you don't have to. And there's a lot of other people that were saying the same thing. There was a lot of people selling their entire portfolios back then, cashing out for fear of crash, which they had every right to do. But there's a few people that continued buying, but they weren't as many as you think. What do you do today in the market? That's a great question. If you want to keep listening to people with crystal balls, we'll see what happens. Also follow us on BiggerPockets. You can follow our savior, Brandon Turner, on BiggerPockets as well. One of my good friends here in Maui that we are hanging out with quite a bit. But he also has some good videos coming out on BiggerPockets channel too. Check out our videos that we've done for BiggerPockets. We've got more coming out. If you like these case studies that I'm throwing at you left and right, please let me know in the comments so that encourages us to make more. We got some more videos coming for you as well, so be on the lookout for that. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe. You can follow me on Instagram at Tarl Yarber, and I'll see you guys in the next video.